Greetings, fans of violence. It's another episode of the Horror Appraisal. I'm Sam. Evan couldn't be here today, but we'll make do. What I'm going to talk to you about is a modern exploitation film that is currently making its rounds in the film festival circuit, and it is kind of just getting going. And we wanted to give an idea of how we felt about the film. And that film is called Heidi Slater, directed by Jean-Paul Bankes-Mercer. We were given the opportunity to screen and view this film, and we are grateful for that because it's been kind of an interesting evolution in our relationship with the director. We saw one cut about 2.5 weeks ago, and I've watched it several times. Evan watched it a couple times, and our initial reaction to it was, What happened? Because it's a lot thrown at you in one package, and the way it's shot is very disjunct, and I'll explain why. But a new edit of this film has been given to us, and it's much better. It's way more cohesive. It's more intelligible, and I think it's actually becomes more disturbing because it doesn't lose that steady build and drive that the film has. I'll talk about that too. Anyway, I'll get on with the plot. You start off and you see some auditions of these girls that want to become Heidi Slater. And Heidi Slater, as the actress believes, is supposed to be kind of a host for a show. And they're going to go do this paranormal investigation into this house. And what their ultimate goal is as a crew is to expose this fraudulent psychic, Tobias Danzig, which they also call Toby. And this house that they're going into is the house of notorious old judge from, I think it's the 18th century, don't quote me, but his name is Thomas Bishop, and what is claimed to be on this land in this house is a pit where he disposed of all of his bodies. It's called the Devil's Pit, but it eventually became called Bishop's Pit. And what happens is there are some experiences between Toby and the crew that, like a seance, and there's Toby gives Heidi Slater a reading and kind of convinces her that he's a legit psychic. And ultimately, this film becomes about hypnosis, and it's a snuff film that is possible because of hypnosis. And Heidi Slater is unaware that she's making, at least for a little while, she's unaware that she's making an untitled horror film, essentially. And the goal is for the sound man, Jeff, the cameraman, JP, and Toby to be killed on screen. There's a caretaker of the house as well that's involved. I can't remember his name. But as you go along, you start to see that the number 11 is a trigger for this hypnotic state. Number 11, they show that it's like it's a number of magical importance, and when the number 11 is said, it triggers this state of behavior that's very cooperative with what they wanted, like with the movie that was originally sought to be made. So as we go along, we see some kind of fun imagery and stuff. There's a lot of really great sound that kind of creeps along and slowly builds, and it creates a sense of anxiety, which is good. And when you're dealing with a film that throws back to the exploitation films of the 70s and stuff, you need kind of a sound. Like, one thing about those films is they had a very simplistic, kind of gritty nature about them. And with the way HD looks today, it's actually hard to be gritty. It's hard to get that. It's hard to get that look. So one way you can achieve the same kind of nauseating feeling that an exploitation film gave you is good sound and a good steady build with that, and you get this intensity that kind of you're not really aware of until sometimes the music stops. But as you go along, Heidi eventually finds out that she's part of this bigger scheme. She's supposed to be raped, which you don't really get a rape scene in this, but it's not necessary. But she was supposed to be like raped on screen, and which Toby delivers this performance. He's frustrated with JP, and he does a really colorful description of what he wants to do to Heidi Slater, and it's if you're a horror fan, it's funny, it's fun, but it's also very disturbing. And what he says is not clean, and he obviously doesn't have any respect for this girl at all. But he puts on an excellent front with her, and I think the actor that does Tobias's part does a great job of balancing and playing two roles. So I wonder if he's actually really bipolar. He balances like going crazy and being like a jerk, but he also is super nice to Heidi. So I guess maybe that's like a real sociopathic way. He's really sociopathic, I guess, is what I would say. Anyway, long story short, this is essentially a snuff film that they're filming, and the people involved around Heidi Slater have agreed to be killed on screen. They've signed a contract, and they say, you know, I agree that I'll be hypnotized on screen, I agree that I'll be hypnotized on screen, and I agree that I'll be killed on screen. And, you know, they follow through. And by the time you get like 3/4 of the way through this, you see everybody's just like crazy. Apparently the land has this magical effect on the crew and on Heidi. And they're just kind of, they lose track of time. They're wandering around, kind of like almost like a Blair Witch feel in that sense. But with that, it doesn't feel as, Blair Witch is just kind of like, I don't know. I think this film does a better job than Blair Witch, I'll just say that. And with the new cut of this film, you have a really good direction. It's a really positive direction that it flows in. And I will say, because of the way that this film is cut now, it grabs the viewer from the beginning and pulls you into this state where you're focused. And you don't lose focus until the end. And you almost feel kind of like excited at the end because this film's been completed, and it's weird. It's a weird feeling, and the way that John Paul Bankes-Mercer was able to accomplish that was maybe we felt like we liked this cast and crew, or I think we felt like there were people that, I don't know. Maybe it's the feeling that we know it's not really real, and we know that they're not trying to really dupe us so much. I know that this is a film that was shot. The actors are alive. They have to be alive, and I don't think Heidi Slater invests in the marketing campaign, invests a lot of effort in trying to fool you into believing that this film is real in any way, that people are actually murdered. I mean, snuff films are investigated, they're regulated very intensely, and you can't get a hold of them. But we see, by the end of this film, we see a range from the actress that does Heidi Slater that's great. She goes crazy, she's on the maniac side of things, and she's now involved in this plot. She figures out that she is supposed to be raped on screen, and instead of being like initially she's kind of like, oh God, you know, they were going to rape me on screen and beat me up and stuff. And these guys knew about it the whole time. Instead of that reaction, she teams up and she's like, I'm going to play the part of a killer in this movie. And and she's like, oh, it's my idea. I'm going to participate in this untitled horror film. And she says, it's my film. And she becomes the driving force from then on, and you see some really disturbing kind of killing happen in exploitation fashion. The way the kills happen reminds me a lot of Last House on the Left, and I think Jean-Paul Bankes-Mercer channels Wes Craven in his Last House on the Left effort, and I think that's a good thing. I think now that this movie has a more involved, invasive soundtrack, I think it has smoother cuts. It's not trying to confuse us so much. I think that it's dead on, and I think it's just cerebral enough that you still have to work with your brain to figure out some of the things that's going on, the hypnotic element and the mysterious magical element that's there. I hope you check it out. Heidi Slater I think it's a good movie. I am considering it a positive film, and I know that a lot of effort has gone into it. It's obvious. The film looks polished. It looks it doesn't have like any glaring mistakes to me, and I just hope that it does well. And I'll leave you with that. What you should do, you should go, you should follow them on Twitter, Shooting is War, at Shooting is War, or you can just look up Heidi Slater. And I wish this film the best of luck on the circuit run. I'm Sam for the Horror Appraisal. Thanks.